So we've been talking about containers, and until now we've been using the Microsoft demo, the Vote app. And you might be asking yourself, well, how do I turn my app into a container that I can deploy into Azure? This is totally optional. I think for you getting Docker onto your own computer, you might be a Linux user, you might be a Windows user. It's going to be an individual thing. I happen to be using Windows 10 home version. And so this is the instructions for how to download Docker for Windows 10. If you want to go down the path of creating your own applications, creating Docker images of them, deploying to the Azure Container Registry, for instance, or Docker Hub, and getting that into a Docker container in Azure. Now, right off the bat, the system requirements for what's called Docker Hub for Windows is a Windows 10 64-bit Pro, Enterprise, or Education. And of course, there are Mac instructions and Linux instructions as well. So I don't happen to have this, and so I'm going to have to do what's called Docker Toolbox. Now, Docker Toolbox is outdated. A lot of people don't like it. It's not as fully functional as the Docker solution for Windows. And so what you end up having is you basically have two options. Okay, so one is you can download a Docker Toolbox. And so there's a link to Docker Toolbox. You can download that app and install it into your operating system. Or you can create what's called a virtual box. So Oracle bought the company VirtualBox a couple years ago, and it's basically a free virtual machine that you can run on your own computer, and then you can install whatever operating system you want into that. And so what some people do is they'll get a VirtualBox installed in Windows, and then they'll install Linux in the VirtualBox, and then they can use the full version of Docker Desktop in Linux in a virtual machine. So hopefully that makes sense. You need to make a decision as to whether you want the older legacy solution called Docker Toolbox on older version of Windows or Windows 10 Home, or if you want to install a VirtualBox and be able to have the latest edition, the updated edition, but it's not as convenient because then you have to go into the VirtualBox, start up your Linux to get into Docker. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to put the link for this attached to this video. And so you can make a decision whether, you can use Docker Hub if you have the compatible operating system, or Docker Toolbox, or installing a virtual machine to get the latest version.